Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and Tankfest 2017 is just around the corner, and to celebrate, Wargaming are introducing Tiger 131 into the game as a tier 6 German premium heavy tank. This is of course based on the only working Tiger in the world, and it's the star attraction at, I guess, one of the biggest displays of moving armor in the world. This video will let you know everything there is to know about the latest premium vehicle hitting World of Tanks, and whether specifically Tiger 131 is a competitive vehicle and if it's worth the price tag. Firstly, I'm going to fully run down the statistics of Tiger 131 and show how it stacks up to its tier 6 heavy tank competition, and follow that up with some ace tanker gameplay. And if you have no interest in picking up this tier 6 premium German heavy tank, then I'll show you how to take them out effectively when they hit the battlefield very soon indeed. So here we have Tiger 131 on the left, the tier 6 Japanese premium heavy tank number 6 to its right, the VK3601, that standard tier 6 German heavy tank, as well as of course a tank as long as it is strong. It's the one and only the TOG 2, and also the Tiger 1, which I must highlight is a tier 7 vehicle, unlike the Tiger 131 in question. So immediately you might notice that the Tiger 131 has identical firepower to heavy tank number 6. So gosh, its gun handling is the same, its mobility is practically the same, apart from it weighs 20 kilograms more for some reason. The armor is identical, and there's only two miscellaneous changes, and that is that it has 90 meters more radio range and its shell cost is 12 credits more. And so to all intents and purposes, if you're familiar with the tier 6 Japanese heavy tank number 6, then you're going to know what Tiger 131 is all about, and I'm going to remove that vehicle from this comparison. So first up, damage per minute, and the Tiger 131's DPM is better than the TOG 2, but it can't quite compare to the VK3601, and it's significantly lower than the Tiger at tier 7. The standard penetration on this short 88mm main armament is 145mm, a lot like the VK3601, but if you elect to use APCR on this vehicle, then you do have 194mm of penetration, which should allow you to be competitive against tier 7 and tier 8 tanks. One thing that is nice about the Tiger's L56 88mm main armament is that it does have 220 alpha damage. Now, while that's not the highest on a tier 6 heavy tank, it is significant, and it does allow Tiger 131 to simply outtrade lower tiered vehicles, equal tier medium tanks, and even some higher tiered vehicles. But one thing that does feel a little bit sluggish about this tank is the shell velocity, 773 with the standard ammunition. If you choose to fire APCR, it doesn't really get that much better. It's now 966. And so that means Tiger 131 can really struggle at sniping at long distances unless you're giving the correct amount of lead, and it's something that took me a little bit to get used to. However, you've got more than enough ammunition to load all kinds of ammunition in this vehicle, armor piercing, APCR, and even your high explosive rounds, because you can carry 92 rounds of ammunition. That gives you a potential damage of 20,000. That's usually enough to be able to kill the entirety of the enemy team multiple times over when you're in your equal and lower tiered matchups. Now onto the gun handling, and it's not exactly bad news for Tiger 131. 2.3 seconds aim time is way better than the Tiger's 2.7 seconds aim time. However, the gun is significantly less accurate at 0.38, and that doesn't really feel particularly German. Also, interestingly enough, Tiger 131 has better dispersion when moving compared to the standard VK3601, but it's the opposite case when you're turning the turret, as we can see here with 0.2 turret reverse compared to the VK3601's 0.16. But one thing that surprised me about this tank is that it does have quite good depression. 8 degrees is not bad for a German vehicle, and considering this does feel like quite a tall tank, you really want to make use of that if your opponents have got into close quarters combat and you want to aim down on their hull. Now onto mobility, and it's not good news but not bad news for Tiger 131. 40 feels healthy. That's the same as the Tiger at tier 7, but it's significantly less than the VK3601 at tier 6. But unfortunately, the power to weight ratio of Tiger 131 is less than 11.5. That's less than the VK3601, and that's also worse than the Tiger at tier 7. And as all three of these vehicles do have the same ground resistances across all terrains, that does leave Tiger 131's mobility kind of lacking. Now onto the armor of this vehicle, and this is where it's really nice to be playing a Tiger at tier 6 compared to tier 7, and that's because you have exactly the same armor layout. So here we can see the differences between Tiger 131 at tier 6 and Tiger 1 at tier 7, and the only key differences that I can work out are that the cupola on Tiger 131 is just a little bit more prominent. You can see that it's square on top, whereas Tiger 1 at tier 7, it's angled in, so that means that you can pull off ricochets off the cupola that you simply can't do at tier 6. But nevertheless, I would far rather play this kind of an armor loadout at tier 6. We're having 100mm of flat armor over the front of the vehicle and also having 80mm over the side with 40mm of spaced armor over the tracks. Or should I say, the tracks acting as 40mm of spaced armor means that you're going to have so much more opportunity to bounce tier 4, tier 5 and tier 6 opponents than when you're playing Tiger 1 at tier 7 and you're engaging up to tier 9. Nevertheless, while Tiger 131 does have fairly thick armor for its tier, it is very flat indeed and not well angled. And so this means that unless you want to overexpose your side armor like this, you are only going to have about 100mm to 115mm of effective armor off the upper plate, and the lower plate is about 130. Now that's going to be okay against tier 4 and even some tier 5 tanks, but really equal tier and higher are going to go through your vehicle pretty much every time. Your mantlet, however, is pretty decent, ranging from about 160 up to about 240 depending on where it gets hit. And so as long as you're moving backwards and forwards and avoiding leaving that gigantic cupola stationary for your opponents to shoot at, the turret armor on this tank can hold up quite well. And I do recommend angling the vehicle pretty much like this and hopefully baiting your opponents into shooting your side armor, which will be an auto ricochet, and if they shoot through your tracks, well, then they have to get through 170 to also detrack you and damage your hull. So while Tiger 131's hit points is a fairly decent 950, it does feel like a step down compared to tier 7, where the Tiger 1 has 1,500 hit points. And of course, Tiger 131 simply can't compare to TOG 2 with its 1,400 hit points at tier 6. But then again, that's a different story altogether. So view range wise, Tiger 131, fairly healthy 370, that's slightly less than the Tiger and the same as the VK3601. But one thing that is a little alarming about this vehicle is the 20% chance to be set on fire. And so I strongly recommend that you use fire extinguishers on this tank or invest in a crew with firefighting capacity. But you know what? I think that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's see how it performs on the battlefield. So here we are rolling out in the only operational Tiger tank in the world. The first time that I saw Tiger 131 was at TankFest 2012. In fact, there's a video on this YouTube channel. I think it's called Tiger 131 at TankFest 2012. So if you're interested in hearing what this vehicle actually sounds like, I've got some video up close and personal. You can hear that engine purring away. Well, when I say purring, it's more like being very close to a very large and very powerful vehicle, but you judge for yourself. Now, this tank, one of the reasons why the vehicle that the Tank Museum have is in such good condition is because it was actually captured in Tunisia. It was bombarded by lots of Churchills, believe it or not, and one of the shells, or multiple shells, hit the gun barrel and bounced down into the turret ring, which jammed the turret traverse, and subsequent damage was done to the crew inside the vehicle, and then they eventually decided to bail out, and they didn't destroy the tank, and that was very unusual because these were such gigantic pieces of technological achievement, and that's one of the reasons why I love tanks, and just seeing how the arms race developed through the war. And it was a really big deal for the Allies to be able to get their hands on one of these, giving up some of the technological secrets as to how the Germans just had the best armor at the start and the mid part of the war. Their tanks were just by far the best. Arguably, though, the Soviet tanks towards the start were good. It's just maybe they hadn't quite organized how they were going to be able to take on the Germans, but it ended up working out quite well towards the end, right? But that's a different story. That's quite a long story altogether. I don't think I can get that out in this replay. Anyway, I should probably focus more on what we're doing here, and that's just murdering a heavy tank that's below me, that poor BDR. He did manage to penetrate us once, but we managed to penetrate him 3 times. We put a round into the Dickomax, but the Dickomax put a round into me. And, you know, you really don't want to get hit by equal tier tank destroyers in this vehicle, and God forbid higher tier tank destroyers, as you are losing 1/3 of your hit points with every shot. Sure, he is as well, but you just don't feel like you want to be giving up those hit points for free. But then again, when you think about it, if I was in a T-29, for example, and I got hit by an equal tier tank destroyer, I'm more or less losing a third of my hit points in that scenario as well. So now we're going to shoot at the AMX, and oh gosh, God forbid that the artillery manages to escape that shell as we put one in. Oh, come on, seriously, now a tracking shot. Okay, 4th time's the charm. There we go. Shutting down that tier 6 French self-propelled gun. Now we can turn our attention back towards the Dickermax. There you go, right into the side. I think we overmatched his armor there, possibly. I'm not sure how thick the side of the Dickermax is, but it is quite possible, thinking how lightly armored that tier 6 premium German tank destroyer is. So I'm just trying to work my way around this position, just trying to put some pressure on the enemy. I do feel quite strong in this location, but wow, even with all of the crew skills that I do have on this vehicle, that sneaky Dickermax was able to put another one into me before I managed to take him out. And now I'm a one-shot for pretty much all of the vehicles on the enemy team. Now I try to wedge my vehicle up the slope here to try and find a shot into the VK, but I don't quite manage to do that. Even though this tank does have a decent 8 degrees of gun depression, I'm just not able to engage that German medium tank directly below me. But 3 kills up, 1,470 damage. You're seeing that at low tiers, when you do have this 1,800 DPM that the Tiger 131 does, you just simply pick apart tanks very quickly indeed. But I'm not trying to say that the DPM of this tank is exceptional, because it certainly isn't. 1,885 base DPM, the exact amount that this vehicle has. Quite a lot of the tanks on the enemy team will have that DPM. I bet you this VK3001D will be cutting quite close to that DPM as well. Now we've seen that our armor does manage to take the occasional hit. We've survived a round from the VK just a second ago. Oh, there's a Dickermax behind me. No, not a Dickermax, sorry, it's his bigger brother. It's the Sturm Mill. And I am just going to try and lap up these hit points. I'm going to try and shoot the track there to try and stop him from turning around and facing his gun directly up at me. Now we're loading high explosive rounds. The high explosive rounds on this tank really aren't very good. They only do 270 damage. That's only 50 extra damage, and you are losing quite a lot of penetration to be able to use them. Your penetration goes down to 44, so I don't recommend you use high explosive rounds in this vehicle very often, unless you really know what you're shooting at, and that is the back of, once again, a very lightly armored German tank. But gosh, in the first 5 minutes of this game, we're up to 2,800 damage. That is a great result for a tier 6 tank, let alone a tier 6 premium. And I don't think we fired any APCR rounds this game, so we'll have to see how profitable Tiger 131 can be after this round. So far, so good for this vehicle. You've seen that its armor can pull off bounces against lower tiered targets, but then again, you do have situations where the rounds are going to be going in against you. The armor is totally hit and miss, but at least it's a lot better at tier 6 than the Tiger 1 is at tier 7. And I really did feel that when I was in my nice matchups in this tank, and this is a middly one, and we're playing against some tier 7 tanks, but when you are top tier and dealing with tier 4s and tier 5s on the opposition, well, at least predominantly tier 5s and tier 4s, then the vehicle does feel significantly stronger. So I'm in another awkward situation. I think I'm trying to play this vehicle as if it's a medium tank almost, trying to put the pain on the enemy here, trying to work the ridge lines. And now we've got a very interesting part coming up here. We're trying to engage this VK302M. We can't see him, we can see his cupola, but of course he can see my cupola. So just to show you what the cupola did look like for the VK there, it is very prominent on Tiger 131. Even when I'm using some of my gun depression, they can still get easy shots up into, I guess, the crown on this vehicle, and that's something that's different between the model on the tier 6 Tiger and the tier 7 Tiger. So now I want to show you how you're going to have to be creative in the Tiger if you want to succeed in this vehicle. It doesn't have the best gun, it doesn't have the best armor. It's quite a good all-rounder actually for a tier 6 heavy, and you've got to try and use it as if it is one. Now we're engaging a heavy tank that is 2 tiers higher than me. This is an American T-32. He's got 105mm with more alpha damage. He's got better hull armor that's way better angled. But of course, if I can manage to try and get him into a tricky situation here, then we can leave him looking really stupid. And even though he's got 10 degrees of gun depression and I've got 8, I can slowly work my vehicle around to be able to get in a position where I can keep him tracked and also hopefully damage him. Now it's very important to realize if I'm aiming just directly upwards, I'm not going to damage his tank as well. What I want to try and do is to aim in this area here. Now I can damage him and also keep his tracks off. And I can allow my allies to also be shooting him as well. But unfortunately, you're going to have to watch out for when people come and support him. Oh, I'm between a rock and a hard place right now. Who do I shoot? The tier 7 Swedish tank destroyer? Or shall I shoot the tier 8 American heavy tank who's trying to come over and get me? Well, I do manage to track him one more time. Will my allies manage to finish him off? Nearly. Come on, guys. You can do it. Come on, AMX. I believe in you. You can finish this guy off, right? No, the T-32 survives. And while my beautiful vehicle has now been rendered, I guess, as a Tiger 131 Black Edition, oh gosh, don't want to be giving Wargaming any ideas, hopefully you guys see what I'm implying here. When this vehicle was fighting in World War II, it'd be fighting against baby tanks, it'd be fighting against Churchills, it'd be fighting against M4s, Matildas, those kind of tanks. But unfortunately, with no preferential matchmaking, Tiger 131 has to deal with tier 8 opponents, and when you start to fight against IS-3s and T-32s, you're going to feel a little underpowered with 145mm of penetration, or that 190 of APCR. Nevertheless, let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats. Our round on airfield was an ace tanker for Tiger 131. This was a high caliber for the 2,796 damage that we dealt. I don't believe we fired any APCR rounds, so that means that we make a pretty cool 58,000 credits profit. Although I will highlight that this is a decent game for a tier 6 premium heavy, and while you can make decent credits in Tiger 131, you certainly aren't going to be making the kind of credits that a tier 7 or a tier 8 premium vehicle will make. So if you are thinking about picking up, I guess, this piece of history as your first premium vehicle, you probably want to go for something a little higher tiered. However, there is certainly one reason why you might want to pick up this tank, and that is that it's going to have a 0 skill Brothers in Arms crew, which effectively means that you get Brothers in Arms for free, and then you're going to be able to train skills after that much faster than if you'd had a standard crew and had to invest the first skill in Brothers in Arms. And the result is that these 0 skill Brothers in Arms crews will be able to reach, I guess, 4, 5 or 6 skills so much faster than a standard crew would. And as this is, I believe, the first opportunity to be able to get a 0 skill German Brothers in Arms crew, I do expect that the Tiger 131 is going to be popular because of that. But I must also make a passing mention, and this is something that I want to address in more detail in the future, that I really despise the idea of wargaming pushing these tanks on us based on them having a premium crew that kind of makes all of the previous effort that you've put into developing a crew kind of useless. I personally feel kind of cheated that I've invested so much time. We're talking about hundreds, thousands of battles to be able to get as many 4 or 5 skilled German crews as I possibly can, and that now if I want to invest some money, I could probably do it in a few hours with the right tank and 300% crew boosters. But more on that in a future video where I can really dedicate the time to voicing my concerns and also backing it up with some statistics. Anyway, back to the point, Tiger 131, is it a great premium tank? Well, no, I don't think this is a great premium vehicle for any reason. I don't think it's particularly strong outside of a good matchup, and as I've shown, while it can make credits, it's certainly not exceptional at doing so. And while I currently have no idea how this tank is going to be bundled, it looks like the base cost is just under 4,000. And due to that, I believe that this tank is probably going to cost about 25 or 30 euros because they do seem to price the lower tiered heavies quite highly. And if you're spending that much, I think you'd be crazy to not pick up a tier 8 premium vehicle such as the Revolurise, the STA2. Even something like a Super Pershing is going to make you way more credits than this tank. But I presume the main reason why people will pick up this tank is not because they're looking to make credits, not because they're looking to be competitive, at least in all matchmaking scenarios, but because of the branding of this vehicle, its legendary status, and to have a little bit of history sitting in your garage. And so there you have it, Tiger 131. I'm looking forward to seeing this vehicle, I guess, in the flesh, in the metal, this weekend, and I hope you enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful to you. If it was, please consider giving it a like, I'd really appreciate it, and let me know in the comments down below what you think about Tiger 131. Are you disappointed, a lot like I am, that it's effectively just a reskin of a tier 6 6 Japanese premium heavy that's already in the game. And due to that, are you going to be missing out on this one, or will you be looking to pick one up? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.